Welcome back to CKLA Chats. I am DLC Foster-Yankey, and in this video, I'll be chatting about Lesson 12, Comedy or Tragedy, in Unit 7, A Midsummer Night's Dream. So this lesson is divided into 4 components that make up the 90-minute ELA block. I'll talk more about those in depth throughout the video. The first component is a summary of Act 3, Scene 2 for 15 minutes. So for this component, students are divided into 6 groups, one for Oberon, Puck, Helena, Demetrius, Lysander, and Hermia. Each group moves to a different part of the classroom with their scripts or their readers in hand. A member of each group is given the group's character card to raise high when the group is speaking. Then the teacher tells students that they are going to read a story, and that when their character speaks, their job is to read the line aloud together with lots of enthusiasm. So another option for how to do this is the teacher could select a student or two to read the narration, or one student from each group holding the character card can do some very simple staging by entering, exiting, looking happy, or looking angry while the rest read the lines. So having a group of students reading the lines and others who act it out while they read is another option. The teacher might also read through the selection twice, first without any student movement, then with 1 or 2 students moving. Okay, so a lot of different opportunities for how to read through the summary. Next, they move on to living character map for 15 minutes. For this component, students return to their seats, leaving one representative from each group standing at the front with his or her group's character card. Arrow and flower cards are distributed to additional students. The class is going to use the arrows to arrange the young Athenians to reflect their love at the beginning of the play. Once students have a draft arrangement of the actors at the front, they should double check that against the notes they took in their activity book Love Tracker. As a check for understanding, the teacher should be circulating as students work, asking questions to assess their understanding, such as, how do you know Hermia loves Lysander? As necessary, referring students back to the text for evidence. They're going to continue with the teacher posing some discussion questions, which are listed here at the bottom of the screen. After posing the first question, students check their work against their love tracker. After posing the second question, the teacher is going to have students rearrange the arrows to reflect the new developments and record in their activity book Love Tracker and label it Act 3, Scene 2. After posing the third question, students are going to put a star next to the moment in their reader. Continuing, the teacher poses the first 2 discussion questions and explains the story of Jack and Jill has been around for a while. They're going to pose the third discussion question, then ask students to reflect on how love changes in this play, and whether they think Shakespeare believes in true love, and what evidence they have from the play that supports their answer. Okay, next, they're going to move on to learning a speech by heart for 30 minutes. The teacher explains to students that they are going to jump ahead in the play to get a better idea of whether the ending is happy, and then introduces Puck's final speech. So students begin by physicalizing some keywords in the speech. Didn't know that physicalize was a word, but apparently it is. And this is going to help students memorize Puck's speech. The words on the left here are written on the board. The teacher has students stand in a circle and tells them that they are going to say the words written on the board, starting with the first word, week. The class together comes up with and agrees on a physical gesture for the word week, which is what this icon here is, just an example. After that, the class is divided into 7 groups, and each is assigned one of the remaining words for which they will devise a gesture. After a few minutes, each group teaches its gesture to the class. Okay, continuing on with learning a speech by heart. Next, students open up their readers to Puck's speech in Act 5, Scene 1B. They're going to read the speech together aloud, and students are going to add the gestures that they came up with for the relevant words. Ahead of class, the teacher has decided whether they want students to memorize a cut version, which is 8 lines of speech, or an uncut version, which is 16 lines. It can also be used as a point of differentiation, with the teacher basing the decision on the specific student. So students will share their underlined words, and the teacher will make a list of words and ideas that students don't understand, encouraging them to define them from context and to write the definitions in the margin of their reader or handout. For particularly difficult words, a delegation is assigned to look them up in a dictionary after class. As a check for understanding, the teacher circulates to make sure students work in the margins, to check students work in the margins of their reader or handout, and for struggling students, assist them in using context clues to define the words they do not understand. Next, the teacher tells students that Puck is addressing the audience in this speech, then poses the discussion questions listed here in the middle. After discussing the questions, the class chants the lines together. Next, the class is split in half, and the class goes through the entire speech aloud, with one half reading the first line aloud and the other half reading the second line aloud. The teacher distributes the 8-line or 16-line finished line worksheet, has the whole class read the speech aloud, and fill in the last word of each line. Students are invited to the front of the room to recite as much of the speech as possible without the paper. If they get stuck, they may ask the class for help by saying, "Line, please." Okay, after that, they move on to writing tragedy or comedy for 30 minutes. The teacher explains that Shakespeare's plays are categorized in several ways, 2 of those categories being comedies and tragedies. They'll talk about the difference between the two, then have students turn to activity page 12.1 and read the prompt, which says, "Put yourself in the place of one of the 4 young Athenians, Hermia, Helena, Demetrius, or Lysander. Imagine that before you fall asleep, you stop to write a diary entry. Write 1 to 2 paragraphs answering the questions below. 1. Does your life feel like a comedy or a tragedy? Why? What do you think is going to happen to you next? Do you have any hope? Remember, you are writing from the point of view of characters who don't know they are in a play and who don't know about the fairies or the workmen. The only information the character has is what's been happening to him or her in the past 24 hours. 2. Use lines your character speaks and the things other characters say to explain why your character feels the way you describe. So after reading the directions to the students, the teacher gives them 10 minutes to write, and then after 10 minutes, the class shares their paragraphs in small groups or with the entire class. Finally, they have some homework or take-home material. For homework, the students are going to practice the first 4 lines of Puck's final speech, but the teacher should encourage them to go ahead and try for all 8 as a challenge. Students turn to activity page 12.2 for tips on memorizing. Alternately, the teacher can assign memorization of the first 8 lines to students who are going to learn all 16 lines by heart. And that concludes lesson 12. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.